The Eastern Pavilion Banqueting Hall, comprising 2 beautifully decorated modern guest suites with seating capacity for up to 1,100 guests. An ideal choice for engagements, weddings, Mendi parties, exhibitions and seminars. Supported by the latest sound and video technology, air-conditioned and free Wi-Fi. Contact us today and see how we can make your vision a reality. The Eastern Pavilion Banqueting Hall, located on Featherstall Road South, Oldham. A perfect choice for your perfect day.
Assalamualaikum and welcome to Ramzan Kareem Show, where we are concentrating on the Brexit. For those of you who are not aware, and will be quite interested to know how many of you don't know about that, there will be the European elections on the 23rd of May. 23rd of May will be the elections when we will decide who will be our European candidates going from the United Kingdom. And for those of you who are probably wondering, oh, well, what's the point? Today, that's exactly what we will be talking about. What is the point? If it's for a few weeks, a few months, if our members of the European Parliament who are going to represent the United Kingdom are going to be in Europe, what difference will they make, and can they make a difference in the next few months or so to come? So I have with me somebody who knows a lot more than I know about the Brexit and has been involved in many of the debates over the last 3 years or so in terms of the Brexit and what's been happening. So welcome, Councillor Shaukath.
Thank you, and welcome to the viewers. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tell me, Councillor Shaukath, that over the last few years now, it's been almost 3 years, I think we've been talking about this, you've been involved in this debate. Did you actually think that it would last so long?
No, if you go back to the referendum, it was actually the same period. It was in Ramzan then as well, in Ramadan. And the turnout from predominantly Muslim areas was low because of that. And a lot of people actually didn't know exactly what they were voting for. There was a lot of lies peddled by the Leave, and to some extent they remain. So the facts weren't there really. And
do you think it was actually confusion, or do you actually?
There was a lot of confusion. There was a lot of lies as well, deliberate lies, misleading, and obviously people were misled. Some didn't bother voting. They didn't know the impacts. Now we have I think one of the problems now we have is that people have now come to realise the impact that would have, and some have changed their minds now. Even the MPs are struggling now because both the main parties are split right down the middle. The Tories as well as Labour. There's quite a few people in Labour who want to leave. There's quite a few people who want to remain. It's difficult.
The original decision could have been, for example, a particular member of Parliament may have decided then that they wanted to leave, but now they believe that they should remain. So it switched over a little bit.
Not only that, the people as well. So it's very confusing, and in all honesty, the government have made a mess of it. What they should have done is that if we were going to leave, then they should have negotiated and should have left.
I mean, some say March. That the actual referendum was a knee-jerk reaction, that there was no they didn't really want a referendum.
They didn't. If you look back, Cameron promised a referendum to the Tory parties to stop many of his voters going to UKIP. It was to please those people who were floating towards UKIP, and he wanted to stop that, win the general election, and to some extent he did that. He then, never in a million, thought he was going to lose the referendum, and there was no plan B, there was no plan that if they decided to leave what would happen. He was so confident he was going to remain. But straight after losing, he resigned, which some people say was a clever move because he's left everybody else in a mess. Theresa May was a Remainer, so she's been in charge of trying to leave now, which must be difficult.
And do you think that is part of the problem, that in her heart she was a Remainer?
Well, yeah, but she did actually
given the task, hasn't she, to actually exit?
She did put the likes of David Davis, Boris Johnson, and the other one. There was 3 of them who were hardcore Leave in charge of it, and they all resigned because they realised it was a bigger mess than they actually thought, and it was a lot harder negotiating than they actually anticipated or portrayed, and that's the problem. So we're going into this now, and I think the Conservatives are going to get a hammering because whichever way you look at it, you can blame Labour as well, but they are in charge.
I mean, ultimately the decision was made. There was a public vote. The public voted.
Well, it wasn't actually. It was like a consultative vote. It wasn't necessarily. If you want to split hairs, they don't have to abide by it, but at the end of the day, it was democracy.
It's not legally binding,
no,
is it?
No,
it
wasn't.
Them with the technical words, not legally binding. Well, there was a vote, wasn't there?
Was a vote. There was.
You, I, many people out there,
yes.
We were given a choice, yes or no, and there was no third option.
Yeah.
And we decided, we crossed the box, and we decided. So there was a public vote, and the vote was, however margin you looked at, the majority vote was to leave.
By a small margin.
Small margin.
Yeah, no, I respect that, but that's what I said. So if they were going to leave, they should have left by, was it 29th of March, and the deal should have been done. And because they've been dithering, it's making it harder and harder. And to be honest with you, a lot of businesses are struggling. Some have folded, some have moved, because you can't sort of run a business not knowing what's going to happen.
In terms of businesses, we speak about businesses, and it's been obviously there out there, the information is there, but we haven't particularly focused upon it in some of the interviews. So let's talk about that. How are businesses being affected? I think in terms of stock.
Yeah.
And NHS, it's been there in within the media. In terms of services out there, people's employment rights, contracts. European workers, but also people from here who work in Europe.
Absolutely.
It's a two-way process.
It is two-way. Sometimes people forget that. Not only there's migrants who've come over here from European countries and working here, there's quite a few people who've gone from here into Europe. There's quite a few who moved over and retired there. They've got to look at their pension rights, etc., while they're living abroad. And most, if not all, the health and safety reforms and regulations are coming from Europe, and they've helped improve the working life in the rights of people who work and the welfare and the health and safety, the environment. They've all come from Europe now. Coming out of Europe, Labour wants to protect that. The Conservatives aren't so keen on that. They said they don't have to.
Some of the legislation that's come out of the European Parliament in terms of agreed legislation. Once whatever date we come to, just for our viewers out there, just for information's sake, what will that mean? Do then employers not have to abide by, for example, the minimum wage or the health and safety?
Well, this is where the negotiations are taking place, because the products, some of them that we sell in Europe, have to be a certain standard. They have to be a certain quality.
So the ISO.
Yeah, exactly.
Standard.
That's the British standard, the ISO, the world standard, the international standard, European standard. If we're not abiding by them, then we'll be struggling to sell in Europe, because they will demand that, that product is.
But why would anybody want to do that, Shaukath? If it's the right thing to do, and it's agreed, is it not just scaremongering? It's not just fear?
No, but it's. I mean, there was a quote from one of the Tory ministers who said, if people want to work for £2.50 an hour, they should be allowed to work for £2.50 an hour. Now, I'm not for that. I think there's a minimum wage for a reason. People need to work that, but that's their school of thought, where they're saying, a lot of this health and safety is red tape. We don't really need it all. It's way over.
I read something the other day, and I think there was a video as well where Jeremy Corbyn was actually saying it should be £10, and
well, I think that's
a 16-year-old should be enjoying the
same wage. Well, I absolutely agree. I've said that for a long time.
But how can that be, Councillor Shaukath, when we've got small businesses who are saying they're struggling,
they
and a 16-year-old is not going to have the same life experience and job experience as somebody who's 36 years old, and they're both going to be going for the same job?
I think the way it is once that person, the 16-year-old, when he starts, they'll be going through a training program. Once he's finished the training program and he's doing the job exactly the same as anybody else, at that stage he should be paid exactly the same. That's the argument. And in all honesty, I agree with it. I've been saying that for a while. The minimum wage, when we brought it in, Labour brought it in, the Tories then said it would impact on businesses, a lot of businesses fall, all that palaver. But they didn't, and they consumed it. Why is it right, for example, the likes of, say, superstores, for example, who make millions of pounds profit every year, yet most of their staff have to be topped up by the government, whether it's working time capacity or it used to be family income support, because they don't pay them a living wage, the government's subsidising that. Yet the companies are making millions of pounds profit.
So you're basically looking at state support as opposed to actually companies actually paying a wage so that...
Yeah, but the companies can afford it. The likes, I don't want to mention stores, but these big stores should be paying the living wage, which is higher than the minimum wage. So they're not sort of burden on the state.
How much of a problem, I mean, we make reference to big companies, we'll come back to sort of standards and legislation in a minute, but let's just focus upon the businesses themselves, small to medium-sized businesses, who perhaps buy goods and services from Europe, who at the moment are trading with Europe, and they're importing goods or they're exporting goods. How much of a problem has this delay
There'll be a couple of delays. One's it's going to cost more. If there's no deal done, the danger is it's going to cost a hell of a lot more to bring stuff over. The second will be the actually delivery times, because there will be so many checks and balances before the goods get here. At the moment, we don't have that. Within the European Union, we have a deal where we can import. So you're talking about border control, exactly,
imports and exports at that point.
That's right. So once that goes, that's why there's a backlog of medicines. It'll be difficult to get medicine straight over like we do at the moment. So some companies have started stockpiling, but how long can you stockpile for?
Stockpiling has been mentioned, and in particular, if you look at the NHS and you look at pharmaceutical companies, not everything can be stockpiled, can
exactly,
it?
No, it
so
can't.
How will that work in terms of the companies, and for those viewers, for example, a certain medicine like insulin and other medicines, I have a family member that works within the pharmaceutical area, and she was telling me that she said it's become a serious concern.
It's a very serious concern. If you imagine whatever stock it is, when you stock it up, it's actually money that's just sat on a shelf, which they could have reinvested somewhere else if the demand was met on a regular basis, the deliveries were done. So if you stockpile, you're actually stockpiling loads of money which you can't reinvest in the business. So it is a worry because your money's tied up. So the more stock you have, and some of this stock is expensive, so people usually have a small, they call it a Kanban system, so that when there's about so many left, you order some more. But at the moment, because they're a bit frightened, not sure what's going to happen, even how these elections were taking place, even the candidates don't know how long they might be elected for. They might not even get to sit down in their seats, and we might be out of there.
Yeah, I was just going to come on to. But in terms of local businesses, those that are trading, those that have got serious concerns, our local trades ombudsman or the councils or representatives, is there no dialogue, no communication going on between them? What sort of support are businesses getting during this period?
I'm not sure if they are from the government. I know they did a trial run of how many backlog lorries they would have if that was implemented straight away, for example. So they did a trial run and they realised it's going to be a lot of long waiting times.
Let's now talk about the candidates. There are 8 seats, is that correct?
That's
within
right,
this
for the
particular region,
Northwest.
for the Northwest.
Yeah.
All major parties. I was having a look at the ballot paper. We did have one of the members of one of the candidates for the European Parliament, Wajid Khan, came the other day. Sajjad Karim, we've yet to speak to him. But the main is that the major parties, it's quite a long, lengthy ballot paper.
It is. It's quite confusing for some people.
I think there's about 11 or something. 10 or 11 different
there's
candidates.
a couple of independents as well, yeah.
And the way that it works, correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Shaukath, that you vote by party, not candidate.
Yeah, that's right. The candidates' names are in the box, but actually you're voting for the party, unless you're independent. And it's based on proportional representation. And roughly, it's a bit complicated how they work it, but if the total vote cast was divided by 8, whatever that equivalent would be equivalent to 1 seat. So if, say, for example, it's 40,000, if, for argument's sake, Labour got 100,000, that would entitle them to 2 seats. Similarly, so the lower the turnout, the more the chance of these fringe candidates have of getting elected, because on the off chance it's a low turnout, you don't need as many votes. So I appeal to the audience and to make sure they vote. Go and vote whoever they want, but at least make sure they vote, because that way we hopefully will get the right candidates.
When you make reference to the right candidates, there's been a growing concern. There was a growing concern that came from post-Brexit vote, going back 3 years ago. And a growing concern now. And in fact, I haven't got it with me, but Labour have used the issue of fascism and racism to pull voters in. Why is that, Councillor Shaukath?
Well, there's the UKIP party, the far right, and there's the Brexit party. Farage used to be in UKIP. He's come out of that. He's formed his own party, which is the Brexit party. And
he's got a lot of publicity out of this.
He has.
Is it fair publicity? You think he's done his work?
I don't think he's done his work, but he gets the publicity because he's made his life on that publicity really, especially for the last few years. He's married to what he terms as a foreigner. His children will have when we come out of Europe. His children will still have access to Europe because they've got German passports, I think it is. So he's not bothered. Obviously, it's going to affect us and our children. So people need to be wary of that. So the bottom line is the way it's set up, and the reason we're saying it is that Wajid Khan is at number 3. And in the end, I think if you
number 3
look at it
in the
Labour list,
Labour candidates.
Yeah. So the way we're looking at it is at the moment, when it comes down to it, it's probably going to be Wajid Khan and a far right candidate, probably Tommy Robinson. So
where's Tommy Robinson come about from? Because up to a few months ago, we'd not really heard of this name. And his names have been bantered about.
He was the EDL, but he's come about in the north. He was part of EDL. That's where he's got his fame from. He's been about, and he's made his name by calling Muslims really and preaching hate and divide. And historically, whenever times have been hard,
it
is.
Do you actually believe he is?
Well, to be honest, when he was jailed a while ago for a couple of months, while he was in there, they've set up a crowdfunding for him, and I think there is between 90,000 and 100,000 pounds for him. So he's quids in. I remember them when they first started EDL, they were struggling to get a microphone. Now they could spend up to 30,000, 40,000 pounds at an event. So they're getting bankroll from somewhere, I'm not sure where, but they are. So there's a lot of hate out there. And historically, whenever times have been difficult, the Tories and the far right have always played on immigration and people unemployed, really, saying they've taken benefits of us and that. And they've been their tactic historically. So nothing's changed.
It could be argued, though, Councillor Shaukath, that when times are tough, then it's about looking after your own or the people that live in the country, not people who are visitors. Play the devil's advocate here.
No.
And that austerity drives are there to protect
Well,
you and I, the people that live here, not people who are visiting here.
No, it's not the visitors. It's people they are having a go at. Is mostly who've been here most of their lives. Some born here, working. Some of the people the Tories have been hitting are low paid. You know, there's been stopped. They've cut back on their working tax credit and child tax credits. But they actually work.
But that's a British decision. That's not British.
Yeah, I know. But they still want to use that, don't they? They still want to use it when it's Muslims and whatever, and they're targeting them. I'll give you an example on, I don't know if you've heard of the Windrush. Right, they come over on the Windrush. There was a boat that come over about 50 years ago. This is from the West Indies, Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados. And they come, and you could arguably say nobody could have integrated better than them. They've really sort of integrated. They speak the language. They do everything
British people
do. But it's not stopped the government rounding them up and start sending them back, which is an absolute crime. You know, it's criminal. And those people have set their lives. There was a school teacher, I actually met him, who's teaching for years as a teacher, and then just recently they've asked for his documents and he couldn't produce them. Some of the documents he did have, the government's lost, so he didn't have them, and they've actually talking about sending him back.
Councillor Shaukath, how is it then? I was at a meeting that you were at in Manchester, where a Labour colleague of yours actually, if I can use the word, appealed or mentioned in that address, and you were present and I was present, that we need to better integrate. Why is that kind of rhetoric coming from people of our background, if I may use that, from Asian subcontinent? Our ethnicities are similar. We may have a difference of opinion in what Britishness is, but that wasn't said by a white middle class male. That was said by somebody from that particular background.
Well, I went to a Black Workers Conference in London, and I met quite a few people from the West Indies who got caught up, whose families have been caught up in this Windrush. And when I come back on that, I think all this integration malarkey is rubbish, because, like I said, nobody could have integrated better than them. Now, put that to one side. As far as education is concerned and speaking the language, I've always advocated people should, as far as reasonably possible, go and educate themselves, because education is strength.
When you speak the language, you speak the language of the land.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. But, going further than that, I've personally experienced in Blackburn, whenever communities have moved, they've bettered themselves, they've got jobs, they move, get a better house, it's a white area, they move out. They call it the white flight. Yeah.
I mean, I remember, if you remember the debate, and it happened in Blackburn.
Absolutely,
with Barbara Castle, we were sat there with Jack Strong. We had this. Yeah. So, has it changed? Oh,
I don't.
Brexit, does it affect all?
Some of my best friends at school were English. Some of my best friends now are English. I have Asian friends as well. So we understand each other. My workmates, some of them, our children have grown up together. So I haven't had a problem. I think as long as there's room and space where people can meet, and whether it's a shopping centre or cinema or football ground. And then, because if you go in Spain, for example, you'll find all the English live together. If you go back in history, when the English or the British were in India or wherever, they didn't integrate. They didn't learn the language, So I think it's a bit rich to expect everybody else to be doing what they did.
But times have moved on, haven't they?
Yeah, like I said, education-wise, I haven't got a problem.
Having a comfort in people living next to their families and friends and amenities is one thing, but then integrating in terms of, as you said, in terms of language understanding and doing and ensuring that we all understand each other, not just language-wise, but in terms of culturally, we accept and tolerance. That's a difference, isn't there?
Yeah, but at the same time, you don't sell your culture short. You don't give up on your religion just to integrate. You are what you are. You can't change that. So you learn the language. I haven't got a problem with that, and you do whatever you have to do, to get a job or everything, to move on in life. But that doesn't mean you forget where you come from. I mean, you forget your roots, and you should never be ashamed of that. You are what you are. You were born, your parents, your heritage.
Why is it though, Councillor Shaukath, that this let's just say this particular topic has become the hot topic for Brexit? Why is it? Because nobody in European Parliament has stopped anybody from speaking any language, have they?
No.
And if we whether we remain or leave, or when that happens in the next
The referendum.
how is that making a difference on this kind of
That's
conversation?
what I'm saying. The referendum was fought on immigration. As far as I'm concerned, that's how they leave won more than anything else. There was other stuff that was promised, like to the NHS and all that. But predominantly it was immigration.
But lots of Asian people voted.
Yeah, because they were misled. No, well, they were misled because Boris Johnson...
Because they didn't want the Europeans to take their jobs either, did they?
Well, no, it wasn't that way. I think Boris Johnson actually said to him, if we can stop the Europeans coming to England or Britain, the Indian subcontinent's people would be easier to come over. This is what Boris Johnson said. And a lot of people thought, well, okay, we could have people from the Indian subcontinent rather than Europe, and that was a lie. Because I think, if anything...
So it was almost an unsaid deal that if we can only have so many people on this island, and if we stop the Europeans...
I find it, because at the end of the day, we're immigrants as well. And for an immigrant to say we should stop immigrants coming over to better themselves is ludicrous. If you look at...
But it was said, wasn't it?
It was said, but if you look around where I live, the biggest employers mostly are Asian heritage. The big companies around there, the most successful ones, are all Asian heritage. So they're putting back what they take out more than what they take out. So I believe honestly there's a lot more people who pay taxes, for example, than they claim to be taking benefits.
You said that in terms of Brexit, it may be weeks or it may be months. So one of the things that's coming out from people who are basically being asked to vote is, what's the point? They're saying, what's the point? If we're only going to be there until October, first of all, why bother being involved?
Well, the point is simple. We don't know if we're going to be there till October or not. We should have been out. We're not out. The way it's going, it could be anything, because absolutely nothing's been decided. We keep on saying we need to sit down and sort a deal out, but it hasn't. And for all we know, it could be another 5 years. Actually, Article 50 could be revoked, for all we know. So it is important.
So we've been talking about Article 50 for 3 years.
Yeah, I know. Well, they went off it. It's actually costing us now, because we pay in Europe for this extra few months that Theresa May has negotiated, after which who knows what's going to happen, because we're not nearer to finding a solution.
So are you somebody that believes that yes, people should come out to vote? And
absolutely, I think you should
Is
exercise. Well, for example, if we don't, we might end up staying in, having the wrong people representing us. It's and that gives them a platform to spile all the rubbish they want, and it gives them a legitimate platform. And that's the danger. When Nick Griffin got in, he was on a platform. Not only that, a lot of finances backed him up because he had that platform. And in 5 years, we had to get shut of him. We did, and I'm optimistic this time round as well.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. Okay. So we are going to go to a short commercial break. Straight after the break, we'll continue our conversation on Brexit and what it means to vote in the European elections on the 23rd of May. See you straight after the break, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
The Eastern Pavilion Banqueting Hall, comprising 2 beautifully decorated modern guest suites with seating capacity for up to 1,100 guests. An ideal choice for engagements, weddings, Mendi parties, exhibitions and seminars. Supported by the latest sound and video technology, air-conditioned and free Wi-Fi. Contact us today and see how we can make your vision a reality. The Eastern Pavilion Banqueting Hall, located on Featherstall Road South, Oldham. A perfect choice for your perfect day.
Kareem special program on Brexit. Just before the break, Councillor Shaukath, we were talking about the importance of voting. As we've said, there are those people out there who believe, well, we don't know how long they're going to stay, and if they do stay, what they're going to do, and what's the point. And you were making reference to the right candidates being there, because those people that are going to be there, 8 people possibly from the northwest, they're representatives of the whole northwest, country, of the region, of the country as well, aren't they?
Well, they obviously will be. They're standing in the northwest, but they will be representing the whole country, if you will, when they go to Europe. But the danger is that we don't know whether it's 5 weeks, 5 days, or 5 years. So they could end up being there for 5 years. So that's why it's really important to make sure, go and make your way. I know it's going to be difficult, it's Ramadan, so if you postal votes, make sure you get them out. On the day, find a bit of time to go and vote, because it is important.
I mean, traditionally, in terms of the voting pattern, comparatively from general election, probably has the highest percentage of people going out to vote. And then we have the local elections, and then obviously by-elections sometimes, and then we have the European elections.
Historically, Europeans have been low turnout because over the years they haven't been seen as important. This time round, they are very important because a lot hinges on it. So, you know, from my heritage point of view as a Kashmiri, if we don't have people who represent Kashmir there, we'll lose that voice. That's to put one side, them representing the human
rights and human abuse point of view, people being having a softer corner and fighting it, understanding it.
But even then, you know, we want to make sure we don't give the far right the opportunity or the platform to spike their rubbish.
Like I said, I mean, if I look at the material that I've seen in terms of the Labour candidates has been mainly around keeping a particular candidate and particular party out, and it talks about fascism and it talks about racism. On the Conservative side, I mean, we will be speaking to the Conservative candidates as well. They make more reference to policies, make more reference to in terms of the change and the importance, and why is there such a difference in terms of how to...
There isn't, because I've seen similar Tory leaflets to the Labour ones. The leaflets you've seen is just one of many, really. That was addressed to predominantly the Asian Muslim community, really, to come out and vote. So that was one leaflet. The Tories have produced a very similar one because, I don't know if it was on TV, if you saw it or not, and certainly on social media, that Nigel Farage has actually named Sajid Kareem.
Yes, he has.
And said, don't vote for the Tories because you'll end up with Sajid Kareem. And that was a reference to his Pakistani heritage. And so he made that reference. And similarly, because of the vote, I'm pretty sure Sajid will win, but we're worried.
In terms of percentage-wise, the way it's seeded.
Yeah, so we want to make sure people go out and vote, because Wajid Khan, that final seat is going to be between Wajid Khan and a far-right candidate.
Because of the way that the vote.
So that's why it's important for us to put that, you know, who do you want to represent you?
But can I ask, I mean, I don't know if you can answer this question, Councillor Shaukath. Why is it that in terms of the ladder that a candidate such as Wajid Khan was put at not at number 2?
Yeah, there's been a lot of debate.
Maybe not at number 1, but why was he not in order to give him a better chance in terms of proportionate and percentage representation on the poll vote? Do you have any answers to that?
Yes, I do. A lot of people have asked me that, and there's a lot of confusion in it. The final decision was NEC. But the one that comes out is that Teresa Griffin and Julie Ward were MEPs before Wajid Khan.
They have a longer standing.
Now, I'm not saying that's the reason, but that's what a lot of people have said. Well, they've been there a lot longer than Wajid. Wajid got in when Afzal stepped down. And
so he's relatively new to the European Parliament.
So whether that was influencing, I don't know, but the NEC made the decision on that.
As you said quite rightly, the decision lies with the NEC in terms of how they place the candidate. One of the arguments that's been put forward, because of the issue of fascism and racism, they wanted to put, if I may use that word, white candidates at the top, and bring other candidates to lower down. That's not the same thing about his standing or the candidate standing,
No.
but for a better chance. But in reality, sure, if that's the argument, I'm not saying it is, but in reality, it doesn't really matter in terms of...
it doesn't, because
you're voting the party, aren't you?
You're voting for the party, you shouldn't. But I think there was a time when candidates' names weren't on there. I'm pretty sure of that. But they have put them on now, because obviously there's a lot of personal vote out there that the party gets. But like I said, the NEC decide. I have no idea how they've come up to it. I do know after them, there's like a man, woman, man, woman, one woman. They've done to make sure there's
Gender.
equal opportunities. Yeah. Only the NEC can answer why they've done it. But if you look on the flip side, the Tories have put Sajid Karim on top. Whereas you could argue that if they put him second, he'd be fighting a lot hard. Well, I'm pretty sure he'll say he's fighting hard, but his supporters would be fighting a lot hard.
It seems, Councillor Shaukath, you just made reference to the fact that people carry their own vote bank.
Absolutely.
It seems that people's personalities, their own standing, their work, their relationships out there with businesses and individuals and communities seems to be playing more of a part this time round than ever before, correct me if I'm wrong, or if you agree with me, than the party vote. Is that correct?
Well, that's true, because if you look at the track record of our candidates, Labour, so if you look at Teresa Griffin, Julie Ward and Wajid Khan's record in Parliament, how many times they voted, I think it's on social media, Wajid Khan was come at the top, and I think Teresa came second and Julie third, and then it was Sajid Karim on fourth. So it's about the work they do, how they communicate to the people. We get a regular newsletter from all three of them, updating us on what's happened, what they're doing, and stuff like that. So that communication and that individual touch, obviously people respect, and when it comes to voting, they have that bank vote.
But do you think that is possible because the younger candidates are more in touch with social media communication?
I think certainly in the last decade, the European candidates have definitely been, if not younger, but definitely been in touch with their electorate. Previous to that, even long-standing Labour councillors didn't know who their MEPs were. I knew, but I never met them. It was one of them, and all of a sudden I've had the opportunity to meet them.
Brexit might be one of the reasons also, because they've had to
possibly.
come out
I'm actually talking
more.
Prior to Brexit. They were more involved, and because even Teresa Griffin, who's probably the oldest there, hasn't been that long. So they are more in touch with the membership and the electorate, and obviously they do a lot of communication, so that's good.
As we've said, that immigration was something that was used as a tool to bring out voters either way in the Brexit actual vote, and again it's come out again. What do you believe, as somebody who's a Labour councillor, has been standing, you sit in the council, you've been involved in different portfolios, what do you believe as the main reasons why people should be coming out to vote?
Well, like I said, if immigration was one of the issues used by the Leave, but if you look, for example, just one example, hospitals, the amount of people who've come from abroad, either doctors or nurses, if they were to leave or sent back home, the hospitals would collapse because they wouldn't be able to run. So there's a lot of skilled labour, and secondly, no matter what they deal,
well, they're not going to send them home, are they?
Well, no. Well, they've done it with
the.
No, well, they've been threatening. There's a lot of people don't know what's going to happen. A lot of people are asking. A lot of people have gone home because they can't stand there, waiting around saying what's going to happen. So they've moved. So
the employees have made that decision.
Yeah,
because they
from Europe.
Don't know.
They don't know where they stand. So they've gone. I think I read somewhere they were employing more from the West Indies and India and Pakistan stuff. So people need to know. But immigration, what people need to understand is, no matter what deal we come out with, one of the conditions that's attached to that deal is the free movement of people. So if they want the customs union, if they want to trade within Europe with the same sort of as we are now, one of the conditions they're attaching to it, or have attached to it, is that there has to be free movement of people, so people should be allowed to come and go within Europe without any restrictions. So
those
that immigration,
tourism and the freedom of movement between those countries. One of the things that was said by the younger people who were very disheartened from what happened.
Well, hopefully a lot of them will be voting who didn't vote in the referendum. So, you know,
that could be a possibility. Was that the fact that young people just are able to just get up a bag and go? I mean, it's going to be the younger ones, aren't they? They're going to do more of that. I mean, I think some of the older people, obviously because of jobs and families and other commitments, but they've been able to enjoy that, haven't they? And they're quite frightened about the fact that they're not going to be in.
It's going to be difficult if you stopped at the airport. But it's going to be a two-way thing. So, you know, if you're saying we can't stop people coming here, what's to stop them saying you can't come here? You know, they'll have the same restrictions. They won't make our life easy. If we come out of Europe, they'll want to make sure, the way I see it, is hard as possible, because they'll want to stop other countries leaving. You know, so whatever deal comes out, we'll be worse off. There's no way we can be better off.
We make reference to young people and for them to, in terms of having a larger stake in the decision making. Businesses themselves, have they been heard throughout this process, and now in terms of the next
I think the government set up some sort of a task force which included businesses and how it impact. I don't know what happened to that. I never got any briefing, but I do know they were consulting businesses who were worried. And to be honest with you, some have packed up and left. Some of the car up Sunderland, I think there's a couple of plants that closed. So it is having an impact. Even just the waiting bit is having an impact on us.
In the next, obviously we've only got a few days left to the in terms of the European vote on the 23rd of May. What sort of work is happening out there in terms of political activists and other people, members of different parties, in particular your party with Labour? What are you doing to try and get the voters out?
Well, obviously it's come at the worst time, to be honest, because up to 3 weeks ago we weren't sure we were going to have these. The Tories actually sent a leaflet out asking residents to complain this way, that way, to stop it actually happening. It is happening now, but it's coming just after the local elections, where people have been campaigning for up to 3-4 months. So done a lot of hard work. This was the last thing they wanted, is to go into another election. But on the flip side, and the bright side, I suppose, we've canvassed a lot of people already. So far as now, we don't really need to canvass them again. We just need to make sure they go and vote. So there was
a bit of a confusion, wasn't it, on the
There was, because the cards went out. So I had quite a few phone calls saying, I was texting them to come and vote, and they were saying, "Are you sure? You're all right in the head? Because the election's on the 23rd, not today." And I said, "No, it's today." I actually had a guy come drive up to check and apologised to me and said, "I honestly thought it was the 23rd," then went back and brought his wife with him to come and vote because he didn't believe me. So there was a lot of confusion, but I think they had to do it because of the timelines. So there must be some sort of statutory obligation to send the cards out so many weeks.
In many countries, Councillor Shaukath, people don't enjoy, never mind a second opportunity to vote in something and to have their say. They're just not given the right to vote, and there are people who give their lives. Is this something that people need to be reminded of, especially during the blessed month of Ramzan Sharif, where your vote, your voice and your active participation is important?
We're asking organisations like the Lancashire Council of Mosques to actually, we're not asking them to vote for a particular party, but we are asking them to exercise that vote. And like you say, it's important. Because we've had it so good, people don't realise the struggles that people have to go through to get that right to vote and to make that difference. You know, some people never vote but then mourn, because I personally believe if you've never voted, you have no right to mourn, because you had a choice possibly to make a difference, but you didn't. So that's why I think it's really important to go and vote. You can vote for whoever you want, but I think you should. I'd personally say Labour, but you are right to vote. You should exercise that right.
In the next few months, I mean, after the 23rd, when candidates will be in there, one of the arguments has been is that, as we covered a bit earlier, was the fact that they're only going to be there a few months or whenever they're going to be. Once they're there, in terms of the actual workload and the work that they do, how much of a difference does it make on everyday life, Councillor Shaukath? An honest opinion, because people think that, well, local elections, general elections, it was pushed out there, local policies matter, local decisions matter.
It makes a big difference, because whenever things happen, there's a lot of consultation goes on. And for something to come into reality, it takes a few years. So very rare do you see something that's debated and then within months it's implemented. It doesn't, I think there's a white paper, the green paper before, and they debate it before it actually comes into it. So it's important we have representation at that early stage who are looking after us. I mean, if you look at the roaming charges for mobiles, for example, it used to cost us an arm and a leg. If you went to Europe, it was absolutely, about £1.50 a minute or something, and like 50p
and
a
now
tax.
it's inclusive in your package.
Yeah, so it's in your package, and that's part of the European Union. Because all that changed. But that didn't come overnight. It took a while before it happened, but it has happened, and a lot of people have benefited from it. So that's one example.
In terms of, I think, I'm not sure if we're going to have another break. Okay, we're going to continue. In terms of, you say about decision-making power, European Parliament is there in terms of legislation, in terms of policy making across the board. When it comes to the views of immigration, but some of the things that in terms of the rights of workers, you make reference to minimum wages, etc. How much decisions are made here within Parliament that affect Europe, or is it the other way around? Is it something
I don't think it's that many.
dictated?
No, I don't think. We make a lot of rules here, a lot of legislation. I was fortunate enough to go to Brussels and see how the decision making was made, and they make decisions, but in comparison to what Britain makes its own decisions. But we have rights of appeal that go to Europe, but that's only right. We'd lose that if we come out of Europe, by the way. But
so where would that go? So at the moment we have a European the Commission that we can go to, the European...
that wouldn't be binding. As far as I understanding, that wouldn't be binding on us. If we come out, we'd have to have our own system.
Or would we not go to the United Nations? Would we skip I've
no idea.
Higher authority?
The way I understand it is because if we come out of that, then we have to implement our own laws. We won't have that right of appeal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if that's a good thing, but certainly a lot of decisions are made here. This thing about Euro makes all decisions, that's not true. That's just not true. But a lot of health and safety legislation, a lot of standards come from Europe, and that's because we have that free trade. Everything has to be to a certain quality and standard,
and that's
quite
only important,
right.
Isn't it? Because if we looked at, I was just thinking of some of the toys out there, computers. We've got lots of gimmicks now. And there was that I can't remember what it's called now, where children were riding about on it, and it sort of it sort of blew up on people overnight because I think it was to do with the power pack that was attached to it.
Well, all that's down to health and safety, and I think if you signed up to the European Code, then it has to be a certain quality, and you're audited to get that mark. You're audited to make sure you've got everything in place.
Our British standards, are they not enough?
No, when you have European standards, they supersede our standards. So British standards in Britain will be all right, but if you want to sell to Europe, you've got to go to the European standards.
What I mean in terms of when I say they're not enough, I mean our British standards, do they not meet the requirements of Europe? Or are they not as good?
Possibly on some aspects, but not all. But there's a good chance that our standards are as good as Europe, but you still need to go through that process of getting that standard from the European.
In order to get the actual the ISO mark or whatever it is. Other than in terms of we've touched upon workers' rights. 0 hours is something that's also been bandied about in terms of workers' rights, and minimum wage is obviously something, but 0 hours. One of the things that we found over the last few years is that employers could be argued want more of a say in how they run their business. Now, one of the things that's been argued is that the decision making needs to lie within the British companies, and we should not be dictated upon by Europe. Every country is different, so Germany would be different to say Italy, to France, to the United Kingdom. But even within the United Kingdom, Scotland, and then we've got Ireland, and then we've got Wales.
I don't think Europe dictates how you run your business. What it does to is says an individual or employer has rights, and what it does say is that you can only work so many hours a week, for example, or so many hours a day, or if you should work so many nights, you need to have some breaks, and that can be only a good thing. I fully support that. As far as 0 hours is concerned, I don't think that's dictated by Europe. That's individually. I personally hate 0 hours. You are just at the behest of the employer. You can turn up one day, they can send you home, they can tell you, we don't want you this week, come in next week. Well, what sort of lifestyle? How can you plan that? So I don't mind temporary work where people say you're on a trial, and then if you're good enough, you'll be employed permanent. But to actually have that 0 hour contract, to me, is criminal, because it just, you don't know what you're on. So you could be working one day, sent home the next, because it's probably good for businesses, but it's not good for the individual.
Going back to this, in terms of the people who are there paying the taxes, the people that are running the economy, obviously the taxpayers is everybody, but in terms of businesses themselves, one of the things that's been pushed out there is trade, business, the movement between the countries. So if the businesses are being told that this is a better system, there should be a minimum contract of whatever, 6 months, 12 months, or 1 year, or 3 years. And then within that carries things in itself in terms of maternity, paternity rights, pension rights, and all those things.
Those come from Europe.
Sorry?
Those come from Europe, by the way.
Those come from Europe. Yeah. So if all these things are coming from Europe,
Yeah.
Yet the economy here is not as strong as it perhaps should be, and there needs to be that flexibility within the market. There needs to be that fluctuation within the market, and also from an employee's point of view, to be able to drop that job if it's not paid well or good enough, and to be able to move to London and to get it. These things are going to hinder that, aren't they?
They are, absolutely. But, you know, we won the 5th richest country in the world, I think.
Apparently.
So, apparently, allegedly.
And we've still got people
yes.
starving on the streets. And
well, that's down to the government, because we're just going back on when you said big businesses and paying taxes. There's a lot of them who are not paying taxes. A lot of the workers are, but big businesses are sort of, they set up their accounts abroad and they end up paying next to 0 pence here, which is wrong, and that's something that, as a Labour government, we plan to address that, because if you're employing people here, you're running here, you should be paying your taxes here. And we feel that would help us invest into our NHS, into our schools, hospitals, roads, because it'll bring that
support
money back.
That was coming in, if I can just touch upon that, and then in the last part of the programme now. Support that was coming in terms of grants that was coming in from Europe.
Yeah.
That is something that was described the other day as seamless. We perhaps didn't notice where it was coming from.
I was just going to say that I think it was hugely underestimated. Liverpool more or less has rebuilt itself from grants from Europe. Manchester has, I think.
European Social Fund money. European
absolutely. Even roads. Some roads were funded from there, but mainly a lot of people probably didn't realise it. I certainly did, and it's benefited loads of employees and adults, which is adult education. You know, there's so many courses going on in workplaces which were funded by the European Union. And it's actually, when Blair, if you remember, said education, 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 and he meant that, he realised that our workforce was very good, but times were changing and they needed to up their skills. And the European funding helped us there, and I know loads of businesses who took advantage of that and upskilled their workforce, which, you know, a lot of people have forgot really. but certainly it's helped a lot of businesses upscale.
Why were these things? I mean, historically there was lots of other mechanics going on, and the way that things were put across. Even now, why is it that people really don't understand the amount of support, or if I use it in a neutral way, the difference that it made and can make?
It was never explained. Like I say, European elections were a non-thing once upon a time. Nobody really knew. I certainly didn't know who represented us. The work was going on behind the scenes, but they weren't at forefront really, like they are now. But it made a huge difference. So we'll probably lose all that. And somewhere the government's going to have to find money to keep that going, and I can't see it really.
Do you think that there's going to be some kind of relationships that are going to
if you think European Union is made of at this moment in time, it's 28 countries. So when they go and negotiate with somebody else, it's a block of 28 countries negotiating with whoever. Britain, when they come out, will have to renegotiate with the 27, but when they go, they'll have to do every single deal again, and that's very difficult. So if you imagine as somebody who goes to a shop, if you've got a choice of going to one shop or 27 shops to buy something, you're most likely going to go to 27 because you've got choice and variety. And so I think, Britain will argue we've got better goods and whatever, but it'll not stop people going and...
Do you think we're going to see, we've got these money market and these kind of commissions and all sorts of webs that have been set. Do you think there's going to be a rise of those kind of consultancies who are going to be bargaining on our behalf? Who may bring, let's say, 5 or 6 countries there, or even 10 countries, or even a bigger picture, all 27.
Well, one example I'll give you is the NHS. There's already talks of bringing some European companies in who will start, the Tories will bit by bit break up the NHS and privatise it, and that's how they'll do it, because they'll sell it off to companies to run certain sections. That's what they've done in America, and that's what they'll do here. So, we'll, as residents, will suffer from that, because in the end, what they want is you to pay for that service. So if you're working, you're going to have to get some sort of insurance, or this turning up at NHS and H&E and saying I'm hurt or whatever is going to cost you. So if you're not in the insurance, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg.
So many things, so many factors. Now, obviously, you are asking people to vote, and we at UK24 TV are also asking people to vote on the 23rd of May. There are many people out there who don't enjoy the privilege of having that opportunity to actually have their say and to make that difference. If there was a final message that you would like to give as somebody who's had an understanding of it and can see both sides of it, and even some of the difficulties of coming out and voting during this blessed month, what would that message be?
Well, I'm biased. I'd say go and vote Labour, but obviously, if whatever, I suggest you just go out there, use your vote, make sure you vote, because we want to get that turnout as high as possible to make sure we get good candidates going to represent us in Europe.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Shaukath. So here we are, it's making sure that we have good candidates, and perhaps we could stretch that a little bit further and say that taking that vote as a responsible vote and using it wisely to ensure that the candidates that we have there representing us are representing us. And I think one of your councillors, a Labour councillor, actually said the other day is that I don't want a certain individual representing me in the European Parliament. So that is something that we want you to consider. Councillor Shaukath's phone's going off now because I think he needs to be somewhere else. We will continue this conversation about Brexit, but obviously we will try to bring in lots of other things that we need to be covering during this blessed month. Having the opportunity to vote and having your say is very important. Having that opportunity, but being given that opportunity, being given that privilege, carries with it responsibility. What we ask you to do is to consider all the options, speak to all the candidates, find out who the best candidate is, and make sure that you get your families and friends out there on the 23rd of May to vote. I will see you again tomorrow with another programme, and tomorrow we'll be looking at what we do in our time to actually look after ourselves, not just in the spiritual sense, not just in terms of political and social sense, but in the physical sense. We are going to be speaking to, I hope, inshallah, we will be meeting a group of ramblers. They are the cramblers that will be coming in tomorrow, and will be speaking to us the importance of enjoying the wonderful weather and the countryside. See you tomorrow, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
The Eastern Pavilion Banqueting Hall, comprising 2 beautifully decorated modern guest suites with seating capacity for up to 1,100 guests. An ideal choice for engagements, weddings, Mendi parties, exhibitions and seminars. Supported by the latest sound and video technology, air-conditioned and free Wi-Fi. Contact us today and see how we can make your vision a reality. The Eastern Pavilion Banqueting Hall, located on Featherstall Road South, Oldham. A perfect choice for your perfect day.